very long ago, the Imo State government took a very bold step by granting free education to our people. This step is a quantum leap, an offer our people should not take for granted, but rather seek all means to maximize its benefits. Education is a nuclear weapon of the mind. When it is truly harnessed, it undoubtedly eradicates ignorance, which is at the very core of societal degeneration. It is one strong lifeline to poverty elimination and brings about a total revolution in the way of life of any people. The Asian nations today are what they are because of this great enduring awareness of the importance of good education. Imo State government has, in essence, given us the ultimate foundation to build our lives on and taken away any fragments of excuse for failure. The ball is right now sitting in our own courts, and we must grab this opportunity to excel. Educational reform in the state is now the mixing elixir that will ensure the total transformation of our school system and produce the kind of quality education that we desperately need to reverse 2 decades of neglect and dysfunction in the system. From the curriculum to the teachers and professors, the need for both change in attitude and goals are essential. It is so crucial that the curriculum reflects the changing times and era of applied science and technology. If we intend to equip ourselves with the necessary knowledge and skills to compete in the new global market of ideas, innovation, and progress, our present-day educational system lacks integration, lacks a well-defined mission, and above all is redundant. Without a clear goal as what we are trying to attain, a good reward for our efforts, as finding the right employment and other opportunities, we simply compromise the quality of our education. Like we often say, the mind is a terrible thing to waste. Unused skills and knowledge is a waste of life and energy, and we must quickly tackle the scarcity of knowledge that has prevailed for over 2 decades. Together with the private sector, our government must seek ways to increase employment and opportunities so as to incentivize the pursuit of education. The failure of our educational system is attributable to the attitude of teachers and the government. They both share equal blame. A teacher must demand nothing from the student except his or her undivided attention, but that has not been the case. There seems to exist an environment of corruption and fraud between the teacher and the student, a quid pro quo situation that is rather unfortunate and demeaning to the teacher. Sex and money have become the items of trade, and government has remained silent. We have students who leave schools for weeks and months and still receive passing grades. This ugly trend must be checked and reversed if we must attain quality in education. Government must be willing to punish teachers who deviate from their moral obligation by instituting a reporting system. Education has a moral component, and teachers must not be the source of early corrupting influences on our children. Government, on its part, must provide the tools and a conducive environment for the teacher to teach. As a young secondary school kid, I remember taking a class in building science for 3 years. The teacher came to class, quoted lines, and we went home, crammed these lines, and during tests and examination, we simply exhausted ourselves pouring out these lines. Not one day out of the 3 years did we ever see a building material. In essence, these lessons lack practicality. A building science student ought to know how much cement, sand, and water make a block. Ought to know how much pressure can be applied to a building rod to bend or break it. Ought to know how wood contrasts and expands under heat and cold, and so forth. I also remember visiting home in the late 80s, and a friend of mine who was completing his undergraduate education and desiring to prove his superiority in his education asked me if I knew what existentialism meant. I was rather stunned. I know what the term means, but I was determined to seize the moment to truly educate my friend. I responded by asking him if he knew how many potholes were between my town, and Owerri capital, and how he could determine how much it would take to repair them. I also asked him the last time him and his professors checked the chlorine levels in the water they drank. He had no answers for me. I then explained to him the meaning of his term and asked him to seek real education. This is just a typical narrative of the type of education we are currently passing on to our children. It lacks any meaningful connection to our present human development, to the many problems facing us. It is rather theoretical, vague, and returning such cramped memories is simply impossible. They fade as soon as the tests are over. If we must take full advantage of the free education offered to us, it is imperative that we quickly reform our educational system. The State Ministry of Education must lead this initiative. It must assemble leading experts in education to assess the general curriculum and incorporate teaching techniques that are most productive. We must abandon certain methods or formulas used over decades to approach subject problems. The ministry must devise a way of ensuring that our teachers are dedicating their paid time to actually doing the teaching and not engaging in their personal businesses. The ministry must also ensure that the relationships between the teachers and the students are healthy enough to encourage learning. It must hold teachers accountable for the performances of students. Teachers can be made to pass yearly certification examinations that are determined by a variety of factors, including the level of the students' educational achievement. They cannot hide under the mighty umbrella of unions and neglect their responsibilities as teachers. A well-planned accountability standard is imperative. Teachers who fail to meet these standards are flagged until they show enough competency or risk being forced to leave the profession. Presently, there's so much complacency on the part of teachers that is unacceptable. Teachers must be highly qualified and demonstrate both high moral and professional conduct. And before we challenge our students, or rather make demands for higher proficiency, we must bear in mind that there are both psychological and physiological impediments to learning. Acknowledging these two factors and identifying those students that are likely victims by our educational administrators are essential. No child should be left behind, and our administrators should make the necessary accommodations or provisions for this group of students. Early literacy and confidence building are keys to revolutionizing our educational system. The constant use of positive reinforcement by teachers and not just corporal punishment at the very early stages of our children are like the one that drugs of steering interest. Our children's education must start very early in their lives. By the age of 2, our government must begin to invest in pre-kindergarten schools in all our towns and villages that produce and introduce learning to our kids. And by the age of 6, these kids should commence the introduction and exposure to real science and computers. Not just teaching them what computers and other technical items are and the definitions of terms, but having these computers in their schools and teaching them how to use them for their mechanics and allowing them to use this equipment to solve problems, tasks, and design images. In fact, teaching them how to engage in scientifically based studies and research, how to identify and understand the many dynamics of our environment. Practical biology, engineering, chemistry, and other subjects. Our classrooms must be well equipped with all the teaching tools, and knowledge and information should be freely available. Teachers equally should be trained and retrained to keep pace with the new science and technology. Meanwhile, we should not hesitate to emulate innovative teaching methods from around the globe. In fact, that should be the goal, to give every generation a competing edge, or at least put them on equal playing field with their mates around the world. Standardized tests should be used annually across the state to ensure a uniform academic experience and determine any weaknesses among the schools and individual students. The corruption in our society has undoubtedly spread into our higher education institutions, and it is at this very phase that our education quality has been grossly compromised. Some university graduates can hardly write decent essays on anything. Their general proficiency in reading, writing, solving mathematical problems leaves one wondering if they actually spent a semester in any classroom. Some of us may deny it, but it's a solid fact, and it's a tragedy. We must go back and honestly fight this destruction of human resources. It is apparent that there are those who are daily seeking to destroy our public education system for their personal gains. These are individuals who are invested in the private education system. The collapse of public education translates into much higher financial success of their private schools. This is rather unfortunate, and these individuals, in my opinion, are enemies of society. Given the overall cost of living, unemployment, and mass decline in income, it is not an overstatement to conclude that 70% of our children will depend on public education for learning. For someone or any group of people to have the heart to sabotage public institutions is betrayal of the worst kind that deserves prosecution. Government must make it clear that it intends to check any abuse of authority and require government officials and employees to declare their financial interest in private schools and sign waivers that automatically demand them to avoid conflicts of interest. Public teachers of all levels must purge themselves of all significant relationships with private schools, and if it's ever possible, they should be forbidden from operating these private schools, except where they choose to substitute their salaries with part-time teaching. All the same, they will be required to inform the government and obtain permission to do so. School authorities must then check their attendances and preparedness to ensure their priorities are in the right places, while government further ensures that school authorities are not engaging in fraudulent acts with these teachers and compromising the rules. It is the strict fixture of checks and balances that will ultimately guarantee progress in administrative law and rules enforcement. Both professors and students have considerably lowered the standards that, in my opinion, the schools are simply churning out semi-literate men and women who cannot defend their certificates nor step into the workforce and be reasonably productive. Either by force of the law or by the same education, we must confront both the professor and the student. The government has the responsibility of seeking both disciplinary actions against professors and students, as well as criminal prosecution. Whatever is at the core of this dysfunctional educational system, it's imperative that they are eradicated soonest. Using undercover law enforcement agents to identify errant professors and students is an option worth exploring, and involving parents in the daily education of their children cannot be dismissed. Parents and guardians must realize that the ultimate purpose of strict rules in schools is to create a law-abiding citizen on the long run who is fit to lead society. So the need for discipline is essential towards achieving such purpose. The hierarchy of authority in secondary school dormitories does impact the way students view and handle authority. It has great organization, teaches respect, discipline, and students are well oriented to follow rules. Government must provide the resources to return our children to the dormitory living arrangements that, in my opinion, ensures discipline. While much damage has been done to public education, I do believe we still have the will to reverse course. We must all demand excellence again and install the virtues of it instead of our complacency and mediocrity. We must raise the bar much higher again and recapture the alluring pride that once distinguished us around the world. The empowering might of a good and quality education is priceless. It transcends generations. Thank you, and may God bless you.